Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to an anime story podcast. Hello, it's the 6th of, oh my god, what month is it? July? The 7th of July. Or, no, 6th of July, and we're going to be talking about today, A Lull in the Sea. Hallen, how you doing today? Oh, by the way, my name's, I'm the Big Bad Moon. Right over here on the right is Hallen 3D, and just below me is Bad Strategy. We are your hosts. Hallen, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you?
We're your hosts. Hallen, how are you doing? I am fabulous, as per protocol. Bad, how are you doing?
I'm good. It's a good day.
I'm just testing this out a little bit. So, Hallen, what did you do for 4th? Anything exciting?
I played video games.
So, Hallen, what did you do?
I played Star Wars: The Old Republic, and I also played Life is Strange.
Ooh, did you?
Oh,
so
time travel.
The 3rd episode. Yeah.
That was...
The 4th one's not out yet.
I like time travel, even though I don't like the writer of Life is Strange because I think they screw up the whole story.
Okay,
at some point.
So this is like the new one, right?
Wait,
so
there's a new one.
Yeah, when you said, well, so there's a new one. So like, she was saying Life is Strange. This is a time travel video game. And she said the 3rd one's not out yet. I was like, but wait, the 3rd one's been out for years.
The 4th episode of the new one.
Time travel's happening.
Did you play the first one?
I did.
And you finished it?
Yeah.
And you agree that the ending is terrible because there's a right decision and a wrong decision? And the writer's a horrible person for doing a twist like that in a time travel
It was
story.
odd. Yeah.
Yeah, I was saddened by the ending of that game.
Oh, wait.
I love time travel.
I know which one you're talking about now. Okay.
Yeah, because it's... Okay, here's the
good
thing to do.
I played the Storm too, I think is what it's called.
Wait, which one?
So they had Life is Strange, the first one.
Right, yeah.
And then they had the Storm one. And then they had the second one, technically.
Oh,
and then they had
okay.
Captain Underpants or Captain something.
So there are in fact 3 games in the Life is Strange franchise.
Yeah, and a side game. Captain Spirit.
Interesting.
And if you play Captain Spirit before you play the next round of games, that goes into your choices for the 3rd game. Kind of cool.
No, that's kind of interesting. I thoroughly enjoyed the first one, except for the ending. Up until the ending, I enjoyed the
I think the fact that you are given a choice at the ending makes the story weaker.
I kind of agree with that. I just wish it wasn't a choice where it's like, hey, here's the really selfish thing to do, and here's the right thing to do. Which one of those are you gonna do?
Yeah.
And so I was like, I'm doing the selfish thing because fuck you, game designers.
Right.
I'm not gonna play that game with you. But anyways,
it is time travel though.
It is
time travel's always great.
The 3rd one has less time travel.
The 3rd one is objectively worse than, although I would say maybe it's a good thing the writer moved away from the time travel because clearly the writer does not understand nor respect the time travel.
Hey Mandy, have you played Brothers: A Tale of Two Sons?
Shut up.
Okay, sorry, I forgot she hasn't played that game. It's a good game.
I forgot.
It's a very good game.
It's a 2-hour game.
Distracted.
2 hours?
2-hour game.
Hey, I'll play it.
Anyways, anime happened.
Anime.
So yeah, we watched A Lull in the Sea this last week. It's I don't know if it has more than one season. We watched the 1st season. It has 26 episodes. It is a show about let me see. How do you sum up the show? A civilization of people who live underwater and can breathe underwater because they have a layer of skin or something.
You are mistaken. You are incorrect. That is not how you sum up the anime. That is a coat of paint. You see, okay. So sometimes there's sci-fi, right? There's sci-fi and like you will be in a universe where people's people can instantly know whatever they need to know because data chips can be inserted to their brain, and we look at the sci-fi story of how technology affects the lives of people, right? And then sometimes there's a story that could take place in any setting, which has a sci-fi coat of paint, which is to say everyone looks like they have cyber limbs and robo brains, but
Mm-hmm.
those are irrelevant to the story.
Right.
Likewise, The Lull in the Sea, it is not about fish people.
Right.
It is about two groups of people. One of them happened to be painted to look like fish people, and one of them happened to not be. Because
They don't
there's
look like fish
nothing.
people. They
Okay,
look
yeah,
like
well,
regular
bear with me
people.
for the their civilization is painted to look as if it's underwater, but nothing about them being underwater actually has any influence on the story. It's just about different cultures.
Mhm.
The only things that
Breaking it
Except for
down.
I live there.
Except I'd be
I
on the
will
fish person's side.
I will also note they can use fire underwater. They do
That's
not when they are
sacred
underwater,
fire.
they don't behave as if they're underwater
That
other
is
than they can
true.
swim at some points. They like there's no restriction in their movement. Their hair doesn't go all everywhere because of the water resistance.
This
It
is
is a
true.
coat of paint, which happens quite often with sci-fi.
I'd say that that's entirely fair. I do think that the
I
fact
thought
that
there were some really clever ways that they used it, like when he's running down the sidewalk and then the bubbles went out when he kind of stops, and it's like.
well, yeah. So though I will say,
It
I
was
mean
very
they
selective.
certainly utilize it as a thematic device
Yeah, it's
a lot, but I will say that yeah, the fact that they are like half of the characters in the story, or rather, there's a civilization that lives under the ocean. You could very much have just replaced it with a civilization that lives in the clouds, or a civilization that lives, on another
well,
island.
I think it's arguable that I would be willing to say you could do it without a
Right, without it
Okay,
being
well there's the major arc of the story that is about the magical element.
right.
But you could have them be just a different culture
Yeah.
in like they have like Chinatown, right?
Mm-hmm.
It could be Chinatown rather than like the underwater village, or it could be like a European village in Japan rather than that. It doesn't feel there's no mechanical effect of them being underwater other
Right.
than their ina or however it's pronounced,
Yeah.
which is I don't know if it's hugely relevant to the story most of the time. I guess it gives them some ability that the normal humans don't have, which is significant later on.
Okay, so rather than
Mandy, you look like you want to contest me. You
well,
look like you want to like
because I feel like
throw
I feel
down.
like what you're getting at, Bad, is that this is a story about human relationships.
It's
It's
about
not it's
conflicting
not about
cultures and human relationships.
okay, that's fair. Helen, what do you think? You do feel like you do look like you're
Aren't all stores?
Yeah, I would say this
mean,
one
We're
specifically.
human, so we make them fit
I would
our agendas.
my argument is specifically that them being underwater is not about them being underwater people. It's about them being a different culture. The important note is that they're a different culture, and it doesn't creep into mechanically affecting things as often as I would like.
That's fair.
I
I
because
I agree to a point, but I also disagree because I feel like if you took the water part away from it, you would be lacking the heart of what they're talking about. And
I
so,
I think you could get away with some. Well, is it meaningful that they're underwater? I think you could get away with them being a distinctive culture because kind of what it is that they're the same culture, but they're underwater,
yeah. And they
and
also have
that's what the
TVs.
divide. I think you could get away with making them a distinctive culture without
no,
putting them
because I wouldn't
underwater.
like that culture.
Hmm?
I appreciate it because it's underwater culture.
Yeah, but you could make a compelling culture that isn't underwater. Like I
No,
don't, because I don't
no,
think
they're better
I don't think they're different
than
enough
everyone.
from being like if
Like
in the
Atlantis.
story, I don't think they're different enough. The only big difference between them seems to be that they have a god that they worship, and the people on the land don't seem to have a god.
Like an
It
You
seems
need to
like
go to the ocean.
if you well, okay, okay, but like if in the anime, are there like, can you tell big differences? Like when they're underwater, they're cooking with fire on a frying pan and making dishes, and when they're on the surface, they do the same thing. It
Man,
doesn't.
that's boring though. Underwater is cool because they have to use a special fire, and it's like
You're
awesome.
just arguing for your emotional attachment to this, Mandy. That's cheating.
I am very emotionally attached to the ocean.
Yeah, that's it.
I
No,
have
that's
the heart of the sea in me.
the heart of Tafiti. So no, yeah. So I do think though that probably when you get down to it, if I'm trying to like really break it down in a
Objectively.
meaningful way, it's I think it's a story definitely about the interaction, like people growing up and people changing, and the nature of changing relationships, because that's kind of a major arc over the for the first half of the story to the second half of the story. It's about people changing and the way their relationships change, and the way feelings for each other change. And they don't see each other for a long. Some of the characters don't see each other for a long time because they half the characters or some number of the characters go into a hibernation under the ocean, while there's kind of a calamity of cold going over the surface. And it's the second half of the series or the show, the first season anyways, is about how those people are interacting with people on the surface when they come back, and how the relationships change, and how it's complicated. Like there's two characters, and I will not remember a single character name, and I apologize for that. But there's the girl who spends 5 years with the fisherman's son, and she had previously had romantic feelings for one of the other characters who was hibernating, and then after spending 5 years with him, the fisherman's son, she develops feelings for him, and they're complicated relationships. She likes the person under the ocean, and he comes back, but she actually has this modern relationship with this other person, who she spent the last 5 years with. I'd say
You can't help who you love.
yeah, exactly. And that makes it kind of complicated. That makes just the nature of relationships complicated. You can't really help how you feel about different people.
Uh-oh, we lost somebody.
Do we?
Where'd he go?
Uh-oh. Hang on. Your Mandy, your head is very big on my screen. Let's see.
I was like, ah.
Oh, yes.
You okay?
I think he. Oh, there we go.
I think the point of the story is that you can't help who you love, but that's not a bad thing.
Right.
But when you embrace that love, you can overcome anything.
Right.
And it's still painful, but it's still beautiful.
Mm-hmm. And that's kind of the that's the thing. The first, I guess I would break the show into two halves. I'd say everything before the first kind of ceremony with everybody, and then everything after that ceremony, after people have been hibernating. And there's that kind of time jump of 5 years midway through the story. So I'd say for the first half they're talking about that, and that's kind of the thing that's tearing apart the Undersea Society. And then for the second half, it's all about people coming back and how their relationships change. But I
think it's interesting that he never, like, the god of the sea didn't realize that the woman who was the sacrificial one always loved him. And she wanted to come back for him. And that fickle emotion of feeling jealous and sad, and he ignored the fact that was staring him right in the face.
The god of the sea did?
Yeah.
Because I the way I had interpreted it was that the god of the sea, the reason he took away her love was, or her ability to love, was so that when she left, she wouldn't also miss him. So it was kind of like
There's a translation differentiation.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah, the way it was kind of like a weird, like, not necessarily negative or positive, but like, well, it's gonna suck for you here and it's gonna suck for you there, so I'm just gonna make it so you don't love anybody. But maybe that's my interpretation.
Well,
where's
to me,
Batman?
what I took it as is that he didn't realize that he was taking away something so beautiful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, that's
and that
fair.
he didn't realize that she cared that greatly for him.
Mm-hmm.
Because they said that in the subtitles, like, but they could have dubbed it differently to tell it slightly different.
Right.
I can't watch dub with subtitles. Dub and subtitles, they don't match ever.
together,
Oh
yeah,
no!
If you're gonna
What-
watch dub, you watch it without the subtitles.
What a horrid dark alley have we gone down again?
Don't worry, we're not going to go on that. But we were just talking about the meaning of the show.
The meaning of the show.
So now that we've really just like covered the meat of it, I do want to take a minute to talk about animation. Any thoughts
So
on animation?
pretty.
I will comment on the excellent backgrounds.
I particularly like the backgrounds. I think the effects are good and passable. I would say the protagonists I'm less of a fan of, but that's my long established like I
the
don't
eyes.
like larger eyes in anime
the
preference. And that's an intentional decision because the protagonists are all middle school students, I believe.
Mhm.
And so they're fairly young, so they're given big eyes to show off how young they are.
Yeah. Eyes that take up about a quarter of their face. Yeah, that's fair. That's the thing. That's
It's
just like that.
it's also it's not a universal, right? Because
No.
older characters in the show have smaller eyes. It's specifically to signify the age of these characters.
And I like that. I like when people make a strong decision like that and they go with it because I feel like it's very intentional. It's done like the execution is done well. I think it's just a
So,
preference
I
because
can-
like I hated Borderlands when I first played it just because I hated looking at it.
To
And
some
now I
extent,
love it.
to some extent, I can agree with you because it is very much a preferential thing. I would say though that giving them larger eyes makes them seem more childish, which makes it harder for me to like relate to them, to like connect with them because they look more like little kids, and it makes it a bit harder to take them seriously as characters, especially because the characters generally are very immature in this show.
He does act really mature, especially
Yeah,
in the
like
beginning.
I think Monica literally runs off to die in the first episode.
Oh,
It's like
I forgot about
that
that.
wasn't a
She just,
stellar decision making, Monica.
And she just runs off into the forest and like.
And then every time she
Fortunately, they found
ran
her.
for the rest of the show, every time she ran anywhere, I was like, no, don't die, don't go off alone.
Oh man.
And she started flaking off. I was like, oh god.
Oh god.
Like, oh my
I'm
God.
afraid.
Oh, yeah, something an interesting thing that I wanted to bring up is this fascinating look at I feel like this is a very Japanese way to look at like a god or like a deity of some kind, in a couple of times, like because he's very sarcastic and he's very like trickstery almost.
Yeah,
The sea god. That. I mean, that personally strikes
well,
me as like
he's
super
a
animated.
scale.
He's a scale.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if this is
He's
something
not the
based
sea
on
god. He's a scale off the sea god.
off of his shoulder.
And he's perverted.
He is perverted.
That's standard in anime.
Standard. Yeah. This is standard issue. Your standard
She
issue.
gets a
perverted
fish
kid.
in her knee.
The fish thing,
and
that
it
was
feels
also
like
very
a
weird.
fart.
Oh no, I was so frustrated. Why did she hide that? She
That was
didn't
also
need to
weird.
hide that. Oh my god, this character just like could have just
If
said.
you were a middle schooler going through puberty, you would probably hide that too.
Well, this is.
I
this
mean,
is
no,
the
I mean
thing.
hide the curse disappearing.
Oh. Well, that's 'cause
That
he said it was
frustrated
So,
me.
funny.
so this is
He
this
gave
is
her
also.
a compliment.
I feel
I'm
like
so
this is.
bothered by that. That just eats at me. She's like, why would you do this? There's no need for this conflict. It is meaningless conflict. Look what you're doing.
I feel like though this is the kind of thing, and this is a thing that can happen in a lot of different anime. Is you can write it off as being, well, they're like 13. You know, that's just a dumb thing a 13-year-old would do. It's like, yeah, that is kind of the dumb thing a 13-year-old would do. Doesn't count that all the characters are 13 though.
I'm actually confused on this. This is something I'm confused on.
Uh-huh.
So 13 is often like used in Japanese anime storytelling
Uh-huh.
to be like this character's basically an adult, right?
Right.
They're old enough that they're independent.
Mm-hmm.
But usually, aren't they in high school? But these kids are in middle school, aren't they?
I mean, I think these characters, I don't remember. They were in school. It struck me
I
as
thought
perhaps
it was.
they were in middle school.
I'm looking
I
it
thought
up.
it was middle school, but usually when a character is 18 in an anime, aren't they in high school? Or 13 in an anime, aren't they in high school? I'm confused by this.
They
Did
might
I
be like
did I
entering
mishear
high school.
something?
I mean, honestly,
Were they all held
that's a
back
very
a year
general
because of the
question.
transfer?
I'm looking it up.
I was
No.
very confused, and I was like,
And this is an interesting thing because it's such a common thing in so many different shows, as is the idea of basing a story around a bunch of kids that are in a school of some kind. I don't know. It's an interesting thing.
I will say, despite being about 13-year-olds, which most animes are,
Mm-hmm.
I think especially because of the specific style and the choice to give them larger eyes, and I think a few elements of the story, the protagonists do feel younger in this show than in a lot of other shows.
Young people have feelings too.
Young people don't have feelings. They're empty, soulless bodies. But okay, so as far as yeah, I thought that was the way that they approached the characters, and the way that they approached the kind of deity character was kind of fascinating. It did strike me as very, very Japanese. What do you say? What would you say, Helen, is the genre for this show?
I don't know. I wouldn't put it in slice of life because like things happen and there's like mythical things. So
Well,
less slice of lifey.
I don't think that slice of life is a bad label for it. Obviously, there's a curse and whatnot, so that kind of changes it up. I think generally I would probably throw it into slice of life.
They put it in fantasy and romance.
Fantasy and romance. That's fair. I guess that's an interesting
They
question.
being the internet.
The internet. Well, if the internet's decided.
The
who it is,
conglomeration.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know who. What?
Oh,
Where does
there
he
we go
keep
again.
going?
It's probably a cat.
They are just mischievous creatures like that.
They really are.
That's why we love them so much.
No, exactly. But I would say, because I was actually about to ask Bad what he thought of the genre. What do you suppose if you had to pick one thing, what's your least favorite part of the show?
I didn't like how abusive the main character was in the beginning.
Right?
Oh my god, he's so abusive. I just hate that character and everything about him forever, indefinitely.
I thought that was pretty kind of messed up. I
Yeah.
was like, he's treating her like shit.
Yeah, no, seriously.
God,
First,
man, they need
7 episodes. It's just like, damn,
you need
man.
you need some serious
Anger
You know-
management classes.
You know what did this well? Was a silent voice. Protagonist, complete asshole at the beginning. They bring him back, and then you're like, I love this protagonist. He's great. Before the end of it, you're like, yes, protag.
We did a
I
silent
want
voice,
you to
didn't
be
we?
happy. I think we did.
Did we did a silent voice? Yeah.
I don't remember. I
Yeah.
remember I've seen it.
Yeah, yeah. Anyways,
Yeah.
yeah, no, that's a great
It's
example. Well, and
Oh
But
yeah, okay.
I
I
will,
know
I
what you're
will
thinking
say
of.
though that the point of like one of the primary arcs of that story is his redemption from being that bad person.
yeah,
So
it's
there's
also in
more
a movie
focus.
form, and movies
Yeah,
tend to be more polished all around
more
because they're a
focused.
smaller format that they
I would
can.
say
I
they
just
tend to be more
It
focused.
astonished me in the very first episode. I was like, he's a girl like that? That's
Yeah,
pretty up.
like
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
mad.
no, I couldn't like him for the rest
I
of the
was
show
like,
because I
that's
was just like,
verbal abuse.
I was like, well, he also grabbed her.
and he also just
Yeah,
did
he
a whole
does.
bunch of like he was
Yeah,
a
like
character that for the first half of the show is just like I'm gonna fight him. I hate him. I hate you.
which is not an
Shut your mouth.
uncommon anime archetype, but when
Yeah.
it's tied to the sort of inappropriate behavior that he had in the first few episodes, it is forever tainted by that unless they do a redemption arc for him, unless he changes as a person at a fundamental level and we get to see that, it's tied to that for the rest of the time he's on screen. So it's really hard to like him as a character.
That really got to me. I was like, who would ever be friends with him? Because
Right.
like he comes in and like they start making fun of him, and then he starts calling them pig because they were like something smells like fish. It's like something smells like pig. It's like,
Yeah.
oh my
Yeah,
god.
he's a very like childish, just
Mhm.
like yeah, I don't like
Yeah.
him.
Mm-mm.
Yeah. That's hard because he's actually the main character, but he doesn't seem to really redeem himself ever.
That is
Yeah.
interesting. He is he the main character?
I
That's
think so. I think
They
more than
follow
anyone else.
him
uh-huh.
the most.
Not that there has to be a main character, but I feel like he is probably the most well covered character in the show.
Yeah.
Okay,
I'm
bad.
just upset about that.
Bad. What is your favorite part of this show? If you had to choose
My
one thing that was your favorite part.
Um, favorite part.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I don't know. That's hard. That's like it's hard to say. I think I I'm gonna cheat and say something I liked about the show. I like the older characters. I think
Mm-hmm.
the protagonists are all a bit young, and I feel more comfortable around older characters. And maybe that's just because they look different, because they have smaller eyes.
That's fair. Yeah,
I
that's
didn't
absolutely
answer your question, and yep. But yes,
well. So
You're not around kids very often, are you?
there's a
look,
reason.
actual kids don't have giant eyes.
That's true. Actual kids have normal sized eyes.
Yeah,
Except
I mean,
for they open them all the time. Like,
yeah, like
my kids do that all the time. They're always like, bling, 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 bling.
yeah, but to have anime eyes, their eyeballs would need to be like twice the height.
Mm-hmm.
And then I would be freaked out. I would be freaked out if I saw kids in the real world that had like double-sized eyeballs. I'd be like, "Oh my god."
Probably anybody would be freaked out by that.
Although I am awkward around children. Straight up, like I don't know how to
You're
interact with them.
weird. You're a thing that moves and talks.
Yeah, pretty much.
I like kids.
That's good. that's good. Baby.
Since I have to.
I think that goes with the territory.
I guess I'll
I don't know,
teach
man.
them.
I've known some people that have kids that don't like kids.
They drive me nuts. Don't get me wrong.
Oh yeah.
They can be little devils.
So let me see. What do you think? What do you think the? Interesting show. So how do I feel about the show? Because it's an interesting. I thought it was not my kind of thing necessarily. It's not the thing that I would have been scrolling through a list of shows and been like, yeah, I want to watch that. The complex nature of human relationships I always think is kind of interesting, but they're 13-year-olds, and generally speaking, all the relationships were relatively simplistic. There was just a lot of like triangling and like lines and stuff. Like I like him and he likes her and
Yeah,
she
there.
likes
I
him and.
I agree with that. I think the
Mhm.
relationships were all very straightforward. I will
Mhm.
also say I don't think there were any big twists in the show.
I
Like
would say
I
probably.
think
I can't think of anything that really surprised me. I
Mhm.
will say
I think it was, yeah.
one theme that I did really enjoy, that came up a couple times, was and it was an arc that happened in the latter half of the first uh, arc, the basically just before the middle of the show. It was this, or maybe in the first third. Uh, it was this bit of the the one guy who had the daughter, and his wife,
Hmm.
his previous lover, had passed away, and it was the friend of the wife who is our one of our characters, who was now like in love with him, and their relationship. God, I worded that in the most confusing way possible. I apologize to everybody. So there are two people, the guy and the girl. They have a kid, and the girl dies, and then the girl's good friend starts dating the guy, and now she finds herself in this place of being the uh, stepmother, I guess, kind of, sort of, not really married, but like the new mother figure in the relationship. That's an interesting relationship. That was an interesting thing. I enjoyed that complicated situation. Um,
I agree. I really like that setup thematically.
mhm,
Yeah, I like that setup thematically. I do think that they didn't like the relationships were pretty straightforward, so they didn't experiment a ton with it.
mhm,
But I like this situation
mhm,
because it is interesting, and there is that weird element of like is it appropriate? Because I mean
mhm.
like
Yeah,
clearly it has to be,
right. Yeah,
but
and these are also people that are probably in their. I mean, between like it's got to be between. I mean, I guess it's hard to say. Between 18 and 25, maybe.
Mhm.
Is how old they were. That was how it came across to me. But sometimes it's hard to tell in some of these.
yeah.
Hal, what did you think about Hal and that whole plot that happened, that whole subplot that happened?
I agree. I think that they were probably in their mid 20s, if
Mm-hmm.
not early. Um, I thought it was really sweet in a way, but at the same time, like, is it appropriate? And so, so the kid, even the kid is like, it's a little awkward.
Right. Yeah.
And I like that it kind of put you in that awkward position of yes, no, yes,
Right.
yeah.
No, and the thing I love about that is that's a complicated situation. You know, that's one that I feel like the only person actually in that situation that seemed comfortable with it was the guy. Um, I think everybody else was like, I don't know, and he was just like, it's fine, it's gonna be fine. Um, and you know what though? I think in the end though, he was kind of right because in the end it was like, yeah, it's fine. It's a weird thing, you know. It's just people.
Yeah. Just he felt like the voice of reason.
Mhm. What the hell
He's
happened
like,
to
two
him in the
people can
second
love
half
each
of the
other.
show?
Hmm?
What happened to him in the second half of the show?
Is he not there? I don't remember.
I don't remember him in the second half of the show. He didn't like die in the
No.
first
I think he
ceremony,
just
did he?
fell. I think he fell into the background and couldn't climb
Yeah,
back out.
Because I
I
don't.
Which
agree
is
with
sad because he was one of. I think he was one of the better characters in the show. When I said I felt more
Uh,
comfortable with the older characters, I think he was. Like, of all the characters, he was probably one of the ones. He may
mhm.
have been the character I rooted for the most out of anyone.
That's fair. I like the grandpa
that. I like the grandpa.
just because of his aesthetic. Just fixing his fishing net.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. The from the Fishman village.
Hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. He
Actually,
he just didn't say anything. If he had an,
yeah.
did he have an arc? I don't know
Um, not really. Um,
if he like if he had been a more integral part of the show, I'd rank him higher.
mhm.
Yeah. He was a solid like background character, which really more of a thematic element than
Right.
anything. More like, yeah.
Yeah, no, I would say that's fair. He's more of a thematic element. He was more of an in for, or he was just kind of a more of a story device for the kid who was his grandson, and just some of the stuff going on.
It was kind of, yeah, it was very much like who was the person? It was was it Smugu? Who was the surface kid who was with him?
Uh, sorry, I lost track. I was looking up stuff. The
Yeah,
surface
Smugu.
kid? Yeah, Sumugu.
So it was very much like Smugu was like, I have a grandfather. And then you see the old guy walk by in the background, and you're like, yeah, he does. I saw him right there.
Mm-hmm.
The
I
story
liked
checks
how
out.
the grandfather's like arm shimmered just a little
Yeah.
bit in the very beginning. You're like, old man, what you hiding? That's great.
Yeah, I think he was very much an element to uh for the support of Smugu as a character. I almost don't think the old man counts as he almost isn't a character, does he? Unless he has some scenes somewhere where he's more focused on
Okay, so they were 14
14.
before the
14.
That's
before the
about
time skip, and after the time skip, he was 19.
They don't change visually do much, do they?
No.
like the characters.
Yeah, do they?
I mean, it's hard to say because I think really only a couple of the characters actually changed. Almost everybody else is an adult, and then the characters that I think changed the most are the young characters, of which they're like two or maybe three that actually change. I guess the mom character changes a little bit, but I really think only what is it? One, two, oh, the two little girls in the beginning.
Yeah, Akari changes quite a bit.
Mm-hmm.
She's 20 when she falls in love with the sea guy or the land guy, and they talk about banishing her, and then she becomes the stepmom.
Mm-hmm.
She's 25 after the time skip. So you were right. About 18 to 25.
Uh-huh.
So she was 25.
Not as far as other show elements that happened. I think decent music. Yeah, decent.
I love the theme song. It makes
Do
me
you?
so. Yeah.
It is a catchy theme song. It didn't jump out to me, but it's definitely one that I do remember how it sounds though. Yeah, I thought relatively decent animation. The voice acting in the dub was just fine. I had no problem with it.
I watched the dub.
Did you watch the dub? Oh, you didn't watch
No.
the dub.
It was passable voice acting, really. You know, it was like Hikari. Hikari sounded as annoying as I thought he was, so
Mm-hmm.
That's fair.
you know, it fit.
Valid.
But yeah, it was fun. Who'd you Bad? Who would you recommend this show to?
People who like the ocean.
That's pretty good.
I think it actually it fits a wide genre. I mean, if people are going for action packed and stuff like that, that's not going to be for them.
It's definitely slice of life. I would include middle school. I would include that term in there.
Yeah.
And I would say like slight fantasy fairy tale elements.
Yeah.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Like with the mythology and.
So Helen, you'd pitch this to who?
Somebody who's used to watching anime. I would definitely say even people who are new to anime, I think would get it and appreciate some of the thematic elements to it. I just feel like it's not one that's going to cause anybody to be thrown off by anime.
That's fair.
I feel like it's a nice toe in the water, especially if somebody is like, I don't know what I'm getting myself into here, you know. I don't know. I don't feel like for the hardcore anime watcher who is looking for that nitty gritty, this is
I
not
think
for them. But I still think it's good. I think it's nice background noise. I think it's calm. I really like it.
That's fair. That's definitely a fair assessment.
I think it's summed up pretty well by just like yeah, slice of life, middle school, slight fantasy, fairy tale elements. I think just that explains most of the anime pretty well.
Yeah. If you want an exciting anime, this is not the anime. Um, if you want something that's mellow, if you want something that is kind of, I guess what's the yeah, I guess maybe a little emotional, a little bit maybe soap opera y. Yeah. Um,
Ooh. So they compare it to Clannad. Clannad's a really good one
I
too.
think Clannad's more interesting. I think
I
Clannad's
think
got more
Clannad's
going
a little
on.
more interesting too, but
Yeah,
it's a nice comparison that they compare it to that. So,
that's fair. Yeah, yeah.
but I get that. Like Clannad has a little more surprises to it. This one's kind of there's no like thing that
Yeah, I think this is definitely an anime where you know everything that's gonna happen just like a little ways before it happens.
yeah.
Okay, I will say the one thing that I didn't like the most about this particular show was how and I've thought about this a couple times, how the protagonist's motivation don't drive the story much at all. Like, because the first half of the story is kind of waiting for
Yeah.
they're getting situated and they're waiting to do the ritual, and then the second half of the story is kind of getting situated and waiting for the ritual, and it's just about their interactions with each other as they're waiting for stuff to happen.
I
Yeah.
would have to say that the main character's wants, his objective wasn't clear and it wasn't specific. It
Yeah,
was very all over the place.
Yes.
And I didn't like that.
he
And
would
I
not
think-
be a passable
It
burning
didn't
wheel
make
character.
it strong. No.
Yeah, I
The
think
GM, the GM would be like, define your goals,
What are you
push
doing?
towards them.
Yeah, I probably also just because that's kind of who the character is. Like, he's kind of impulsive and he doesn't seem like he has much of a plan. He just kind of emotionally goes after, certain things based on, whatever situation he's in. So yeah, definitely did not have like really strong motivational goals. And I think that definitely for me was one of the things that I would imagine that's probably one of the things that would make it slow for other people, was that most of the time it feels like everybody's waiting around and that they're interacting with each other and having, relationship complex problems while they're waiting for something to happen.
So this is something, this is something I would be willing to draw attention to, is there are they kind of have relationship quarrels whilst the overarching story happens to them, but the overarching story isn't so much of the cause of their quarrels. It's like their quarrels feel petty sometimes because they are not being driven by other factors, and they
Right.
are not driving other factors, right?
I will say that that their relationship, like their kind of stories going on, are distinctly very separate from like the big like events of the story. They don't really affect the big events, and the big events. I mean, I guess the big events
which
affect
like
them. I will say though that the big events and the Sea God and stuff does mirror their relationships and how they're, unrequited love and all this, stuff. It's the same problem they're having, but they're really kind of separate. They're just having the same problem.
That makes sense. I didn't think about that. That's a very valid point. I will say also
Mhm.
that if it snowed salt for long enough, I'm pretty
Oh
sure
yeah,
all the wildlife would die
that was
and all the people would turn into jerky.
that was something that as soon as that happened, I was like, really, salt is snowing on the land. Everyone would die. There would be no plants. Everyone would shrivel up. This is
visual.
ridiculous. Salt snow? Salt's not cold. Why is it cold?
It's a nice visual.
I get that it's a thematic thing, but it doesn't make any sense. That was really silly. I think I stopped the show. I paused the show at that point. And I was
You're
like, really?
wait.
So,
wait
like-
a minute.
Like, well, and because as soon as it started happening, I stopped and I was like, wait, okay, so like the sea god's angry, so he's now gonna kill everyone on the surface. Because if it snowed that much salt on the surface,
No, I don't think it
nothing
caused
would
it.
grow.
I think it's a cycle. I
Well,
don't
okay, yeah, it was like a side effect of his power or something like that.
like. I think he kept it from happening because it was a natural phenomenon that salt snows and that all life on Earth dies to the horrible salty demise of being turned into jerky.
This is clearly not Earth. I'm sure there's a planet where this happens.
Delicious jerky.
People jerky, fish people jerky.
You'd be well fed if quite dehydrated.
If quite dehydrated, that's very true. Well, okay, so as kind of a final thought on the show, well, Hallen, do you have any kind of final thoughts on A Lull in the Sea?
I just think it's a really nice one to sit and I'd rewatch it again just to have it on in the background.
Just like have it playing on.
Yeah.
Just like that's like me and
It's
Buffy the Vampire Slayer. Just like it playing in
Yeah.
the background.
Like it's a great one to just kind of rewatch again. There's certain elements that are really interesting, but
Mhm.
it's not something that would bore me to have in the background.
Right.
It would keep me entertained, but I wouldn't have to pay attention to.
Would you? So there's one season, yeah.
Yes,
And
26 episodes.
Would you want a second season?
No.
No.
No, I think they summed it up pretty well.
Mhm.
If they had a second season, I feel like they would need to heighten some specificities about the characters, or even if they made new characters, what they want and why the story exists. I think that would need to be heightened, but I don't think they would do another one, so.
Yeah, that's fair. And I agree. Bad. What are your final thoughts on the show?
There is no best girl. Best girl is most assuredly not the sea slug. Waifu might be like, I don't know, the guy that was interested in Akari. I guess he seems okay.
That's fair. I guess nobody really pops out as waifu in this particular show. For me,
You know, he fights for his love, though. He fights for his love.
I know who the waifu is. Waifu.
Although
is,
he's really,
waifu for me is that that one guy who popped up in the second half of the show, and he just has a truck, and he's just like, "Hey, it's me from that place. Let me just help you out real quick. Okay, bye." It's like, wait, who was that? Was that one of the kids from middle school? He just like pops in and he's like, "Hey, how you doing? Yeah,
Let me step
remember
in for
me?
a minute, yeah.
Let me give you a ride home."
That's creepy.
Yeah, that was every time. And every time he popped up, I was like, "Wait, no, seriously though, who was he? He was a person? Okay." He just some
I
guy
like
with a truck.
Atari for best waifu just because she went through so much. She got like banned from the sea. She was the one who took over as the stepmom. She was
Oh
just
yeah,
like,
yeah. No, that's fair. Okay, so
Yeah,
I think she's waifu, and then I would say best girl was the truck guy.
I don't know, like,
yeah, truck guy.
like the guy who's after Akari kind of like gives up, right? But the guy who's
Yeah.
after her, even though he's completely inept and can't use scuba gear at all,
Yeah,
he fights.
he
He
just-
fights for his
That's
love.
fair,
Like,
He
that
does.
he's
is
got some
fair.
industriousness.
except for with how to use scuba equipment.
Look, Industrious people don't need to know how to do things. They just need to work hard.
That's true. You're right. Beautiful. But yeah, so I think that pretty well sums it up. A Lull in the Sea. An interesting show. I had fun watching it. We're going to talk about real quick the show we're going to watch next week or next month. I do that every time. I don't know why. The show we're going to watch next month. Helen, what is it called?
Demon Slayer.
Demon Slayer. We actually talked about it before we started the show.
Kimetsu no Yaiba?
Yaiba.
Yaiba.
I don't know what that means. What that
It's
meant.
it's the Japanese translation of it.
Oh, okay. But yes, and so the show is what is it about? I can't remember.
I don't know. It's
So-
kind of like a fighting anime.
Mm-hmm.
There's some
They
fighting
do
goes
a
on.
really cool thing with it where they use like the graphics that they use like really black blacks in places and really white
Oh.
whites.
Nice.
And so like at times there's like things that really pop out, which is really cool.
Wholehearted agreement. I think the aesthetic of the show is one of its strong points. I think it is distinct. It is not in a cliche or
agree.
overused anime style.
Agreed. It's like an adventure fiction, a little
It's
bit
kind of-
dark.
It's kind of like it's kind of a fantasy. It's set in dark feudal Japan, except also there are Western influences at one point that are kind of more industrialized.
It's weird too because it's like there are industrial parts to it, but it seems like it's not necessarily.
Yeah,
it's like
it-
in the past, but
it's
not.
well, I think it's the like feudal Japan when Western influences were showing up. That said, the Western
Okay.
influences, the more industrialized elements seem very background, very like this is to
Mhm.
define the location. This is not an important element in the story.
Agreed.
Interesting. And it's about monsters.
It is okay, yeah. So there are demons, and demons eat people because they like tasty people, and it makes them more powerful.
That makes sense.
And
And certain genetic bloodlines too.
it's a little
Oh.
bit of a battle anime in that there's an episode and they begin fighting, and then the next episode is that same fight, and then the next episode they almost finish, and then the episode after that they finish the fight.
It
Oh my
does
goodness, how
do
many-
that a little bit.
how
It's
many-
not bad.
It's
It's not as bad as like Dragon Ball Z. It's not
It's no DBZ. It's
Well, that's like you don't compare things to.
but it does build more towards that as the show goes on, I
What-
think.
Yeah, it has
One does
been.
not simply defeat Frieza in 20 episodes.
Yeah. Yeah, so I think it's a little bit more like story packed initially, and then it starts going more into longer battles and longer fights.
Okay.
But
That's
there's
interesting.
Contextually, there's still story because like even if there's one fight, he may not necessarily be fighting. You might see somebody else fighting something. So it branches a little.
We'll also say the blonde-haired character is too extreme. They need to tone him down.
No,
He's like a 12. They need to put that down to a 6.
I agree. Have you watched the newest one though?
No, I think I'll hold off
Or they-
until.
How many
yeah.
episodes is this?
It's currently
Uh,
15. They're supposed to be 26 when it's done.
Oh, 15. Oh, dang it. When is it going to be done?
Well, it's one episode a week.
Ah,
Or
dang.
no,
So
that's volumes. No, how many episodes are there? It's not 15. It's like 10. Maybe it's 10
No,
right
we're on
now.
15 right now.
Are we on
I'm
15?
Sure. I'm pretty sure. Let me check.
So, but
Crunchy.
basically, what you're telling me though is that we're not gonna it's not gonna be finished by the time we're talking about it.
Oh, 14 came out. 14 just came
14
out.
came out. Okay.
So 15 is next week's episode. No, it's not going to be finished by the time we watch it.
Okay, well that's fair. That's fine. There'll only be like 1 or 2 episodes left. Then we can speculate about what's gonna happen, which is like
There
my
will
favorite
be-
part.
A whopping total of 8 episodes left.
One of my favorite parts of watching television shows of any kind is sitting with the other person that also has not seen it and just speculating on what the hell is going to happen. That's super enjoyable.
Why do you watch anime with me then? I
Well,
know,
you
I've
see,
seen all of
the
these.
problem is that I can't. If it's either watch anime with Noah when he's already seen it, or don't watch anime.
We should watch the new episode together.
Oh, the new one? I haven't seen any of them, so I'll be totally lost.
Well, I mean, at some point.
Oh yeah, no, for
We
sure.
have a month. We have a month.
We have a month. It'll be great. Yeah, no, I think that'd be wonderful.
And I have a bunch of popcorn, so I can bring
Oh
them
my
up.
god, I love popcorn. It is. I'm trying to think. It is. I was just thinking, how many days till Halloween? Huh? Anybody else think that?
Halloween.
But yeah, so I'd say that's pretty much the show. We're next. What was the title of the show next month?
Kimetsu no Yaiba.
What is the American title?
Demon
Demon
Slayer.
Slayer.
Demon Slayer. That's
You know, but
so
it's
much
never
easier
done.
to
It's
remember.
never depicted as separate, right? It's always Demon Slayer, like colon Kimetsu no Yaiba.
Well, that's the same with The Lull in the Sea. They did that.
That's
Lull in the
confusing
Sea
to me
was-
because I assume that it is the Demon Slayer Kimetsu no Yaiba.
It was Nagiyasu A Lull in the Sea.
That is a confusing way of putting it. I feel like they need parentheses or like something around it rather than the colon makes it feel like it naturally follows.
Mhm. Yeah.
Interesting. Well, I am looking forward to watching Demon Slayer. I think that will certainly be a nice change of pace.
We should watch Shield Hero after.
Shield Hero finished.
Is it finished?
I know. Yes.
We could also, if we wanted to watch, it's also 25 episodes. If we wanted to watch a finished anime, granted it's a full 25 episodes, so we need like arrange our time properly.
Okay. This is okay. So I'm
There's
I
another
should.
one that came out.
I feel like I should look through some anime because Bad, we were talking about this last couple of weeks. Was that generally the way it works? Is at the end of the show I say, hey, what show are we gonna watch next week? And you guys have a bunch of suggestions, and I go, yeah, man, that sounds great. Let's do that. I love it.
You should look through it.
I should look.
You can't
I should look through some shows and see what sounds interesting.
just toss out the decision making to other
Do
people.
you know what came out?
What came out?
How to Pick Up Girls in a Dragon, is that what it's called? Or a dungeon? How
How to pick up how? Wait, no. Is it wrong to look for girls? in
Oh,
a
is it wrong? Yeah. Is it wrong?
Are you looking for? Is it wrong to look for hot springs in a dungeon?
Is it wrong to pick up girls in a dungeon? And the new season, they just did the recap episode today. It came out like a couple hours ago. So they're starting it.
Is it wrong
So
to pick up
excited.
season 2?
Mhm.
Is it wrong to try to pick up girls in a dungeon?
I'm so excited. I just had to nerd out for a minute.
Wait a minute. Is this the anime where when they kill the monster, a little crystal drops and they cash it into the bank for money? That is too gamey. That is straight up like a video game thing. I can't approve of this.
At least it doesn't drop coins and pairs of leather boots. But anyways,
He has a
that
goddess in love with him.
looks like that's just about all the time we have left for today. Thanks for watching, everybody. Again, we'll see you next month. That's going to be the 3rd of, oh my god, August. Really? Dang. The 3rd of August, we're going to be watching Demon Slayer or Kimetsu Yaiba?
Kimetsu no Yaiba!
Yeah, that one. Thank you very much for watching. Have a lovely day. Bye, everybody.
Thanks, guys!
Bye.